I'm delighted to have this inaugural lecture reflect on women's rights in a man's world, and as you know by the topic, adjudicating, interpreting, and enforcing Sharia law in Islam. We'll be joined in a conversation with Judge Khulud Al-Faqih, Hawa Ibrahim, and Layla Ahmed. Sharia in Arabic means path, and Sharia, or Islamic law, guides all aspects of Muslim life, including daily routines, familial and religious obligations, and financial dealings. It's derived primarily from the Quran and the Sunnah, the sayings, practices, and teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. Precedents and analogy applied by Muslim scholars are used to address new laws, new issues. The consensus of the Muslim community also plays a critical role in defining the theological manual. And we have seen, especially in the last couple of years, with the Arab Springs being manifested in a number of regions around the world, the extent to which women's rights has surfaced anew as a contentious feature of Sharia law. And so the work that Judge Khulud has done in adjudicating women's rights in the context of that law is particularly intriguing to us today. Khulud Al-Faqih graduated with honors with a law degree from the University of Jerusalem in 1999. She received a master's degree in private law from the same university in 2005. In 2001, she received her license to practice law and worked as a lawyer at the Women's Center for Legal Aid and Counseling, an organization dedicated to assisting battered women. From 2003 to 2008, she worked for the Defense of Battered Women, where she gained extensive litigation experience. In 2008, she passed 2 competitive judicial exams in Ramallah, excelling in Islamic law portions. 1 year later, she was appointed as a judge in the Sharia court of Ramallah, making her the first female Sharia judge in Palestine. Sudan is the only other Muslim-majority country that has appointed women as judges in Sharia courts. This makes Judge Al-Faqih's appointment truly historic, and she is breaking down walls and creating a space for all of us. Thank you so much, Judge Khulud. Our second speaker for this afternoon, and we'll have a panel conversation, is Layla Ahmed, who is by no means a stranger to this place called Harvard Divinity School. She came here in 1999 as the first professor of women's study in religion. That was 2 years after I graduated. It was just a little bit too early. And was appointed to the Victor S. Thomas Chair in 2003. Prior to her appointment at the Divinity School, Layla was professor of Women's Studies and Near Eastern Studies at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. While at the University of Massachusetts, she was the director of Women's Studies program from 1992 to 1995, and the director of the Near Eastern Studies program from 91 to 92. Her latest book, A Quiet Revolution, The Veil's Resurgence from Middle East to America, has been widely acclaimed and actually just recently garnered her the $100,000. I don't even know the name of the award. All I heard was $100,000. She's also known for her most pivotal work, Gender and Gender in Islam, The Historical Roots of a Modern Debate. Her current research and writing interests include Islam and gender in America and issues of gender, race, and class in the Middle East in the late colonial era. Hawa Ibrahim is also no stranger to the Divinity School. She is a senior partner at Aries Law Firm. She's worked as a lead attorney with a team devoted to the cause of human rights for women in Nigeria and has won a number of precedent-setting cases before Islamic Sharia courts. Ibrahim has been a visiting scholar at St. Louis University School of Law and Stonehill College, a World Fellow at Yale University, a Radcliffe Fellow, and a Fellow at both the Human Rights Program and Islamic Legal Programs at Harvard University. While a Radcliffe Fellow, Ibrahim adopted an interdisciplinary approach to delve into the theoretical foundations of Sharia law and examine how they've influenced legal practice, which has in turn affected the human rights of women in West Africa. Her research led to the publication of the book Practicing Sharia Law, 7 Strategies for Achieving Justice in Sharia Courts. It was published by the American Bar Association in 2012, which will be disseminated to legal practitioners and judges who have responsibility for interpreting Sharia law. As we come today, our format is going to be very straightforward. We're going to have opening comments by Judge Khulud for approximately 15 minutes. Then we'll invite Professor Ahmed and Ms. Ibrahim to respond to the judge and engage in a conversation between the three of them. Finally, we'll expand the dialogue to include each one of you and conclude at about 6:30. I'm going to ask that you would do at least a couple of things in preparation. One, I want you to actually take a look at your cell phone. I know you think you turned it off. You remember putting it on vibrate, but if you would just take one final look to be sure that it's either silent or on vibrate. I can't tell you how often God has spoken in church from the cell phones. So we're going to ask God to speak in other ways today. This event is also being filmed for a documentary film entitled 3 Judges, which will profile Judge Khulud. And so you will see the camera going. If you have any questions or concerns or prefer not to be included in that documentary, please see Carly following the program today, and that's Carly right back there. Are you ready to have a stimulating conversation that we could all engage in? Let's prepare to receive Judge Khulud.
في البداية أنا برحب بكل واحد موجود هون، ويعني بعتبر إنه ممكن أنا ما أقدر ألاقي الكلمات المناسبة اللي أشكركم فيها، خصوصا إني أنا في جامعة عريقة مثل جامعة هارفارد.
In the beginning, I would like to really thank you all for coming here, and I cannot find the proper word to express my gratitude to be in a great institution like Harvard.
واللي من خلالها بتمنى إنه صوتي يوصل لكل امرأة موجودة في العالم بغض النظر عن المكان اللي هي موجودة فيها ولكل إنسان موجود على الكرة الأرضية.
And through this institution, I hope that my words will reach all women in the world and will reach these women who their voices are not heard.
بالبداية بعرف بنفسي، أنا اسمي خلود الفقيه، وأنا أصلاً من عائلة لاجئة بعد الاحتلال الإسرائيلي عام 1948.
I want to introduce myself first. I am Khulud Al-Faqih. I am Palestinian. I'm refugees from a Palestinian refugee from a refugee family who took refuge after 1948.
وهاي الأسرة سكنت في قرية اسمها قطنة شمال غرب القدس، وكنت أنا واحد من 12 فرد، طبعا أنا الفرد الثاني في العيلة.
My family took refuge to a village called Qatanna. Qatanna is a village in East Jerusalem, and I am one of 11 members in my family.
طبعا بدأت دراسة القانون بعد تخرجي من توجيهي بمعدل 92.5 التحقت في جامعة القدس وحصلت على درجة البكالوريوس في القانون بدرجة امتياز بال 1999.
After I graduated from high school, I went to Al-Quds University to study law, where I graduated from there in honor.
بعد ذلك حسب القانون الموجود عندنا حتى أني أنا أصبح محامية لازم أني أنا أتدرب مدة 2 في المحاكم على اختلاف أنواعها سواء كانت شرعية أو مدنية أو جزائية.
Based on the law there in Palestine, to become a judge or a lawyer, you need to become a lawyer. You need to practice for 2 years before you become a lawyer.
طبعا أنا بدأت التدريب في رام الله، وهون كانت عندي المفاجأة إني أنا قادر أشوف المرأة موجودة في القضاء الجنائي. المرأة الفلسطينية استطاعت أن تدخل هذا الباب من عام 1982، وهي موجودة في القضاء المدني اللي بيحكم البيع والشراء والرهن. طب يعني ليش هي مش موجودة في القضاء الشرعي واللي هو بيحكم كل نواحي الأسرة، بيحكم المرأة كزوجة كبنت كأم يعني. وأنا عندي إيمان إنه المرأة هي مش نص المجتمع زي ما إحنا دائما بنحكي، المرأة هي نص المجتمع وهي بتربي النص الآخر فيه كل المجتمع.
When I went to Ramallah, I was surprised to see, you know, the lack of women in the Sharia law and the Sharia courts. Palestinian women were involved in the civic law and the civic court since '82, but I was really surprised to notice the lack of women with this Sharia court, especially because this court specialized with a lot of areas in women's life lives in Palestine.
مش كل هذا الحكي حكيت أكثر من هيك. anyway.
Sorry.
فالقضاء الشرعي هو بتناول كل ما يتعلق بالمرأة من زواج ومن طلاق وحضانة وإرث. ممكن هيك أحسن شوي.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the judicial law specialized in too many issues in the family, like the marriage, the divorce, the heritage, and before she was saying, you know, as كنت زوجة.
لا لسه ما كنتش.
في هذا الوقت.
لا ما كنت.
Okay.
فطبعا كان السؤال الكبير ليش المرأة مش موجودة في هذا القضاء؟ فهذا الأمر أنا بأمن إنه ربنا سبحانه وتعالى لما خلق الإنسان ميزه عن كل المخلوقات بالعقل.
So my first question was why women were not part of this law. I believe that, you know, God created us with the ability to think about these things.
وما يعني الأصل إنه ما أوقف أنا أمام أبواب مغلقة أغلقت بدون سبب للدفاع عن مصالح. الأصل إنه الإنسان يفكر في كل ما هو موجود عليه حوله.
I should not stand in front of closed doors. These doors were closed by reason. I should think about what's going on around me and find solutions.
فهذا الأمر دفعني إني أنا أعمل دراسة أكاديمية حول الموضوع تناولت شقين، شق قانوني وشق شرعي.
And this reason pushed me, encouraged me to do a research on this topic. One part of this research was based on the Sharia, and the other part was based on the law.
ومحور هذا البحث هو لماذا لا تتولى المرأة منصب القضاء الشرعي منذ الإمبراطورية العثمانية حتى العام 2001.
So the theme of this research was why women cannot hold a position in the Sharia law since the Ottoman time until recent.
فتفاجأت بصراحة بالنتيجة اللي كانت مبهرة إلي وكانت هي نقطة البداية لتشكيل الحلم الداخلي.
So I was surprised by witnessing this surprise and this dream that was you know I used to hold all the time.
كان الشق القانوني بتناول إنه ما في مانع يمنع المرأة من تولي منصب القضاء الشرعي، حيث إنه إحنا بحكمنا القانون الأردني لسنة 1972 وهو حكى إنه يستطيع كل مسلم إنه يكون قاضي ما توافرت فيه شروط معينة.
So based on the law, there is nothing that says that women cannot become judges in the Sharia law. And based on the Jordanian law that was issued in '72, there is no area in the law that says that women cannot be a judge.
وكان النص عام هو كل ذكر دون تمييز على أساس الجنس.
And the text was clear that there shouldn't be any discrimination based in the gender.
أما الجانب الشرعي فكان كمان هو أمر مثير، فحيث إن أنا وجدت إن هذا الأمر هو مدار خلاف بين فقهاء الشريعة الإسلامية. في جزء أجاز زي ابن حزم وابن جرير الطبري وبعض الأحناف، وفي جزء منع وفي جزء أجاز ببعض التحفظات.
So within the Islamic thought and the school of thought in Islam, it was a very interesting area for me where I realized that, you know, some school of thoughts and some scholars agreed and some scholars disagreed on women's participation in the Sharia law.
واللي أجازوا كانوا ابن حزم وابن جرير والأحناف. طبعا وإحنا المذهب الرسمي عندنا في فلسطين هو المذهب الحنفي بحكم إنه إحنا كنا جزء من الدولة العثمانية. فكانت المفاجأة يعني لا إنه أنا في كل أمور الحياة بطبق المذهب الحنفي، ولما اجيت بدي على الشيء اللي بتعلق إنه المرأة تكون في هذا الجانب أخذت في جانب متشدد هو المالكية والجمهور. فهذا كان سؤال كبير.
So a big question was for me, you know, Islamic scholars like Ibn Hazm, Ibn Jarir issued that, but we go behind Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa school of thought. So it was a surprise for me, you know, Abu Hanifa school of thought allows me to become a judge, but when it comes to Ibn Hazm and Ibn Jarir, they do not allow me as a woman.
ابن حزم وابن جرير والأحناف أجازوا.
الأحناف.
والحنفية إحنا بنطبق الحنفية في كل ما يتعلق بأمور حياتنا بحكم إنه إحنا جزء كنا من الدولة العثمانية اللي هي كان المذهب الأساسي عند الأحناف.
أبو حنيفة ما أجاز.
أجاز.
الحنفي.
أجاز والأحناف.
أوكي. ابن حزم، ابن جرير والأحناف أجازوا. So the scholars Ibn Hazm, Ibn Jarir, and Al-Ahnaf, they allowed women to become, you know, involved in the Sharia law.
فليش أنا أخذت العادة وانتشرت إنه إحنا نأخذ بالمالكية أو الجمهور اللي بيمنعوا في حين الأحناف أجازوا. أنا أصلاً مذهبي حنفي في فلسطين.
So why the habit was set from the beginning to go after the school of thought of the scholars who do not allow women to become a part of the Sharia law, and us in Palestine we follow the school of thought of Al-Hanafi, which allows us to by Sharia, which allows us to become part of the Sharia law as women.
طبعا أنا أنهيت البحث وحملته ببساطة، خلاص صار عندي إيمان بالفكرة اللي أنا فكرت فيها وحملته ورحت دقيت الباب على قاضي القضاء ودخلت.
So I believed in this idea and I want to pursue this idea. So I took it and I went to the High Supreme Court in Ramallah to talk to him about it.
كان في حينه هو الشيخ تيسير التميمي اللي هو Chief of Justice.
So Sheikh Taysir Tamimi was the Chief of Justice back then in the Supreme Court.
طبعا دخلت فبحكي لي إيش بدي؟ قلت له بس أنا بدي أصير قاضي شرعي.
So when I went to him, he asked me, "What do you want?" And she told him, I just want to become a Sharia law judge.
طبعا هو ما كانت ردة فعل عمل لي هيك. طبعا هو بعدين
So his reaction, he did not say any word. I mean, his reaction was, you know, physical.
طبعا أنا حكيت بالبحث اللي أنا عملته، فبحكي لي طيب ماشي خليني أفكر أخذ وقت وبعدين بنحكي بالموضوع.
So I talked to him about the research I have done, and he told me, well, give me time to think about it, and I'll get back to you.
حكيت له ماشي بس بوعدك إني أنا راح أصير قاضي شرعي.
I told him, okay, but I promise you, I will become a Sharia law judge.
طبعا هذا الحكي كان تقريبا بال 2001 2002، وطبعا بدأت بعدين حياتي العملية كمحامية وكان لي مكتبي الخاص، وبعدين اشتغلت في مركز المرأة للإرشاد القانوني الاجتماعي كمحامية بمثل النساء المعنفات في المحاكم.
So in 2001 and 2002 I became a lawyer and I started practicing law, and I also was involved in just a sec. The Center for Legal Aid and Consulting. It's an organization that defends women's rights.
طبعا وهذا الحكي استمر معي من 2003 لل 2008 وهذا أعطاني خبرة واسعة في مجال القضاء. ممكن أنا مثلت النساء فيما يزيد عن 1500 قضية خلال هاي الفترة أمام المحاكم.
So this experience that extended until 2003 gave me an extraordinary experience in law and practicing law, and where I represented around 1,500 cases for women in the court.
طبعا هذا لحد عام 2008 وخلال هاي المرحلة
2003 Sorry, this was from 2003 until 2008.
وبعدين إنه حصلت أنا على الماجستير في القانون الدولي الخاص من جامعة القدس.
Then after that I earned my master degree in the international private law from Al-Quds University.
طبعا كان إنه هاي استغليت طوال هاي الفترة، يعني هذا الحلم ما طلع مرة واحدة على أرض الواقع، يعني كان هو زي بذرة أنا زرعتها ولازم إني أتم أعتني فيها وأسقيها لعمال ما تكبر وتثمر.
So this dream of becoming a judge in the Sharia law did not came from nowhere. I planted this seed and I had to take care of this seed until it grew up.
وبالفعل فكنت أنا أستغل كل مؤتمر، كل ورشة عمل، كل اجتماع وأنا أحكي إنه أنا بدي أصير قاضي شرعي.
So I used to take advantage of every single meeting, every conference to say it loudly, I want to become a Sharia law judge.
يعني خلال هاي الفترة أنا استطعت أن أغير النغمة اللي كانت موجودة بالأذانين.
So during these events, I managed to change the mentality to have them accept this term, a woman to become a Sharia law judge.
وخصوصا أمام القضاة الرجال اللي كانوا طبعا الفكرة مرفوضة تماما أمامهم.
Especially in front of the male judges, which the idea for them was absolutely rejected back then.
طبعا وأنا كان عندي إيمان إنه الرفض كان لنزاع مصالح، لأنه هذا المجال كان حكر عليهم، فبالتالي يعني مش راح يسمحوا لامرأة تيجي تنفسهم فيه.
So I believed back then that this you know siege on this idea was based on some economical or social status and benefits for these men. I did not believe in it and I pursued it.
بال 2004 2005 كانت مسابقة قضائية، طبعا أنا ما قدمت أوراقي بالوقت المناسب لأنه كنت في حالة ولادة سيزيريان، بس بعدين رحت وأخذت أوراقي ودخلت على قاضي القضاء وحكيت له هي أوراقي.
In 2004 and 2005 there was a law competition. Judicial competition back then, and I had a cesarean back then, so I couldn't participate in this competition. However, I went to the judge and I revisited him, the same judge, and I gave him again my file and my study.
فكان لي يعني خلص آسف الوقت انتهى راحت عليك يعني بما معناها.
So he told me, I'm sorry, it's past. It's too late. You're too late.
قلت له أنا بعرف وأنا بحترم المدد القانوني، أنا إنسانة قانوني بالدرجة الأولى، بس أنا بأكد لك إني أنا المسابقة الجاية راح أكون قاضي شرعي.
So I told him, I know I'm a law person, I respect law, but I promise you, next competition I will be here knocking your door again.
طبعا بال 2008 كانت المسابقة الثانية ودخلتها وشاركت فيها بالوقت المناسب طبعا هاي المرة.
So in 2008 there was the second competition. So I participated in this. I ran for this competition.
وكنت أنا واحد من 45 متشارك وأنا كنت المرأة الوحيدة بينهم.
So I was among 45 other participants, and I was the only woman in this crowd.
وبالفعل يعني نجحت بالامتحان وكانت يعني تقدير جدا عالي.
So I passed the exam with a high degree.
طبعا ما نجح العدد اللي كان لازم يتعين بهاي الشواغر اللي كانت موجودة، فعملوا امتحان استكمالي لملء الشاغر.
So the number wasn't enough to run this job, to hire people for this job. So they issued another competition to qualify this gap.
طبعا وانا حكيت مع زميلتي كانت الاستاذه اسمهان، طبعا انا حكيت معها بالمسابقه الاولى، فبحكي لها يلا تعالي وبنشجع بعض واحنا اكثر من وحده هيك بنصير.
So I talked to my friend Asmahan, and I told her, you should come and you should participate in this competition. We'll be like two women, we'll encourage each other.
في الامتحان الأول قالت لي لا مش هالكيف، ممكن بعد 5 سنين بفكر بالموضوع.
So at the same exam, she told me, no, not now. Maybe I will run for this in 5 years.
بس بالامتحان الثاني لما حكيت خلص الباب انفتح ولازم تفوتي، ففعلا هي شاركت وكمان نجحت.
In the second exam, I told her that's it, the door is open, you have to come and participate, and she did, and she passed.
وبهيك كنا احنا اول صدر مرسوم رئاسي لتعييننا بالجانيوري 2009، وكنا اول قضيتين شرعيتين في فلسطين وفي البلاد العربية الإسلامية.
And in January 2009, the government issued the president issued that for Khulud and her friend to be the first 2 women judges in the Sharia law to hold this position in the Middle East, not only in Palestine.
طبعا هيك انه احنا كنا بس هيك اجى الحلم على الورق، واجت بس انه زي ما اخذنا شهاده ميلاد، بس بعدين بلشت المعاناه وبدات التحديات.
So this dream was on paper, but it was like a birth for us. After that, after we fulfilled our dream, the struggle started.
يعني التحديات كانت كثيره، ممكن كان شيء جزء منها مضحك وفي جزء منها كان يعني ببكي.
There are a lot of challenges that we faced. Some of these challenges are sad, but other challenges were like, funny.
يعني من التحديات اللي كانت أول ما تعيننا جابني الشيخ تيسير وحكى لي هي صرتي قاضي، بس احكي لي هلك انت شو بدي البسك؟ هم بدي البسهم مش الطربوش ولا هاي، وانت شو البسك؟
So Taysir, which he used to with the highest court, the judge Taysir, when she went to him at the first time, so after she was appointed to this position, she went to him to his office and he told her, okay, now you become a judge. What should I dress you? I dress the man with these hoods, with big, robes. Now, what should we dress you with?
قلت له ما تقلق، راح أفكر وأعطيك حل.
I told him, don't worry, I'll think of something.
بالفعل يعني فكرت، فوجدت إن أنا وأسمهان كنا التنتين الوحيدات اللي درسات قانون.
So I thought, and I found out that me and Asmahan, the only 2 women who studied law.
ففكرت إنه الروب المحاماة هو جزء بيمثل إنه إحنا دراستنا القانونية.
So I thought that the robe for law, for lawyers, present us as a law persons.
بس عشان نتميز كمان لازم أفكر بإشي كان ثاني، ففكرت إنه إحنا كلنا فلسطينية، فيش تمييز بيننا لا على أساس جنس ولا على أساس اعتقاد ديني ولا على أي أساس تمييز بانتماء سياسي، إحنا كلنا فلسطينية وكلنا تحت القانون، فأجتني فكرة إني أنا أحط علم فلسطين بهذا الشكل.
So and I thought about it, and I thought like we're Palestinians. There's no difference among us in Palestine. We are under the one umbrella of representation of being Palestinians, and I thought of this idea of putting the Palestinian flag on top of my robe.
وبهيك لكينا زي للمرأة الفلسطينية القادمة.
And this way, Judge Khulud created a costume for women's judge. It became later like the women's judge, dress in the court.
من الأشياء المضحكة رح بلش بالمضحك لأن المحزن خليه للآخر.
So I'm going to start with the funny experiences and challenges, and I will save the sad experience and challenges for the last.
كان إنه أنا بعد بشهر 8 بال2009 كان لازم أخلف البيبي الرابع عندي.
So in August 2009, I gave birth for my 4th child.
فرحت على الشيخ تيسير وبحكي له إنه أنا بدي إجازة ولادة.
So I went to Judge Taysir and I told him I need my maternity leave.
فهو حكى لي هي أول مرة بيجيني قاضي إنه إجازة ولادة.
This is the first time I have a judge knocking on my door asking for maternity leave.
حكيت له لا مش بس هيك وبدي كمان ساعة رضاعة.
And I told him not only that, and I need like an hour to breastfeed my child when I come back to work.
فطبعا يعني كانت كثير في مواقف تصير مع الواحد، بس يعني بنتعداها وناخذ خطوات جديدة.
So there's a lot of things that we ran into within this field, but we learned to pass these obstacles and make new steps and move forward.
الإشي اللي كان تحديات شوي صعبة بالنسبة إلي اللي هو كان إنه المجتمع ما تقبلنا، المجتمع تربى عنا كمجتمع عربي بالدرجة الأولى على إنه هذا منصب ديني.
One of the hardest obstacles that we faced is the society. The society did not accept us because the society was raised on the idea that this position should be only for religious males.
وإنه لازم يكون شخص له لحية ولابس طربوش، ولا مرة تكون مرأة في هذا المنصب.
And this person has to grow a beard and have, a special hood that represents religious people, but not a woman.
واللي كان ألمني أكثر أنا إنه اللي رفض وجودنا هي المرأة مش الرجل. يعني أنا فاجأت إنه الرجال تقبلوني بسرعة، بس النساء ما تقبلوني بالمرة.
What was even more painful for me that I was rejected more by women than men. So I was accepted more by men than women there.
وبذكر يعني إنه أنا في بداية تعييني فاتت ست ودخلت في المحكمة. طبعا في المحكمة إحنا أكثر من قاضي بنقول، ولكن كل قاضي لحاله في مكتبه.
So in the beginning of my career, I remember a woman came to the court. We are like several judges in the court. So a woman came to the court.
وطلعت هيك في الباب فعملت هيك. أنا ما بدي مرة تحكمني، وراحت على الغرفة الثانية.
So she came to the room and she looked in the room around and she found only me and she said, I don't want a woman to issue a judge for me. I need a man. So she changed the room after that.
فطبعا هذا أنا بأمن إنه هذا هي تربية اجتماعية خاطئة.
So I believe this is, a wrong social status that we were raised in a wrong social principles.
وهي غير مستمدة لا من القوانين ولا من الدين.
And this attitude, this mentality was not taken or extended from neither the law or the religion.
طبعا كان التحدي الثاني اللي كان موجود عندي هو إنه أنا بدي أطبق قانون أكبر مني بالعمر اللي هو قانون الأردن لسنة 1976.
So the second challenge was for me is I need to practice an old law, which is a Jordanian law that was issued in 76.
هو أكبر مني.
And it's much older than me, this law.
فبذكر إني أنا رحت على الشيخ تيسير وبحكي له يعني أنا مش عارف كيف بدي أطبق هذا القانون وهو أكبر مني.
So of course I went back to Taysir, Judge Taysir, and I told him, I don't know what to do with this law. This law is bigger than me.
فهو حكى لي لا أنت.
Is older than me, sorry.
خلص يعني أنا بركن عليكي، ما في مشكلة، أنت بتقدري تدبري أمورك.
So he told her, well, I rely on you. You can fix these problems.
فحكيت له أنت بتعرف كيف أنت عامل معي؟ بحكي لي إيه؟ فحكي له إنه أنت كيف تجيب سباح غواص ماهر كثير وتنزله على قاع المحيط بس ما معه أكسجين.
So and she told Judge Taysir, what are you doing to me right now? It is like as if you are bringing a very highly qualified professional diver and you send him to go deep in the ocean without oxygen.
طبعا فهذا الاشي ولد عندي رغبة تانية اني انا كنت جزء ولازلنا بنشتغل على تطوير القانون وتعديله وفق مصادر الشريعة الإسلامية ويكون يلبي حاجات المجتمع الفلسطيني الحالية.
So this also created inside me the motive to work with this law, to change it, to add on it, to make it beneficial for the Palestinian society in terms of law and in terms of Islamic law as well.
طبعا كمان كان من التحديات الثانية إنه كانت في عنا كثير إشكاليات مع القضاة الرجال في البداية.
So another challenge, we faced a lot of problems with the male judges.
طبعا في البداية أنا كنت أسمع أكثر من واحد منهم يحكي خلص إحنا راح نطفشها.
So I used to hear, you know, some rumor among the male judges saying that that's it, we need to get rid of her.
ولسه كان الإشي اللي بزيدني إصرار إنه زي عاملين مراهنة بيناتهم إنه هي راح تستمر ممكن أسبوع ممكن أسبوعين ممكن أقصى واحد أعطاني 6 شهور.
So what make me more insistent and would give me the power to stay there, because there was like this game of bets and competitions among the male judges. One judge would say, oh, I'll give her 2 weeks. No, I'll give her 6 weeks. No, I'll give her like 6 months and she will get tired of here and leave.
بس استمرنا ولا زلنا موجودين.
I continued and I'm still here.
طبعا بال 2009 تم اختياري واحد من أكثر 500 شخصية إسلامية مؤثرة على مستوى العالم.
In 2009, I was chosen the most influential woman in the Islamic world, in the Islamic world.
مش woman, personal.
Personal. Yeah. In 2009, I was chosen to be the most influential person in the world.
شيء بدي احكي انه انا بال 2012 في ديسمبر 2012 كانت عندي مفاجأة كبيرة.
In 2012 I had a big surprise for me.
أول شيء هو نجاح القيادة الفلسطينية في حصولها على عضو مراقب في الأمم المتحدة.
First is the success of the Palestinian leader to gain a membership in the United Nations.
بعدها بيومين أو 3 على أقصى حد حكت معي قناة الحرة في دبي.
2 days or 3 days later, Al Hurra TV called me from Dubai.
حكوا لي إحنا بدنا نعمل معاكي مقابلة، فبحكي لهم يعني على إيش.
They asked her for an interview and she asked them about what.
فهم حكوا لي ان انت تم تصنيفك في الارابيان بزنس المرأة العاشرة من 100 على مستوى العالم العربي الاكثر تأثيرا.
تم
اختياري من الارابيان بزنس اني انا رقم 10 من اكثر 100 امرأة عربية تأثيرا على مستوى العالم العربي.
So they told her you were chosen to be one of among 100 women, the most influential and powerful women in the Arab world.
كنت العاشرة.
And she was the 10th among these 100 women.
فكان عندي حديث نفس في هذيك اللحظة، وكان شعور يعني جدا أنا ما بوصفه حتى لما أنا برجع لهذيك اللحظة بتختلط معي عندي المشاعر.
So at that moment, I had a very mixed feelings at that moment. It's hard to describe them, but I had a very mixed feelings.
فبحكي هيك إنه القيادة الفلسطينية السياسية كلها رجال، نجحت إنه رفعت علم فلسطين عالي على مستوى العالم.
So I thought like most of the Palestinian leaderships are men, and they succeeded to raise the Palestinian case again internationally.
وأنا امرأة فلسطينية بحلم بسيط بدأ عندي ونما استطعت إني أرفع كمان علم فلسطين عاليا.
And I am, as a woman who I start with a small dream, I succeeded again to raise the Palestinian gaze international wise.
وعشان هيك بس 1 minute. وعشان هيك أنا عندي رسالة دائما أنا من بداية تعييني لحد الآن وأنا بكررها في كل مكان بروح عليه وفي كل ممكن لقاء بحكيها.
So I have a message. Since I took this job, I usually send this message wherever I go. I send this message.
طبعا هو لكل امرأة موجودة على سطح الكرة الأرضية.
This message is to all women in the world.
إحنا كنساء لازم ننظر لحالنا من مرآة كاملة مش من مرآة مكسورة.
As women, we have to look at ourselves from all directions, from all mirrors, not from a broken mirror.
لأنه إذا إحنا نظرنا لحالنا من مرآة مكسورة مش رايحين نشوف إلا أجزاء، والأجزاء ما بتعني شيء.
And if we look at ourselves as women through a broken mirror, we'll see ourselves as parts, broken parts, and part doesn't mean anything.
بس إذا نظرنا لحالنا من مرآة كاملة راح نشوف مخلوق كامل بكل حقوقه مش منتقص منها ولا شيء، وإحنا والرجل مع بعض بنكمل المجتمع، ما في حدا أحسن من حدا.
And if we look at ourselves as women from a complete mirror, we'll see a complete human being with full rights. There's no difference between this human being as a woman and the man in this world, and together we can succeed.
And that's it.
Wow. Thank you so much. I know Leila and Hawa, each of you have some questions that you are ready to pose right now.
Okay, this is a very tough act to follow. Judge Khulud, actually what we've learned, and I didn't know before, you're not only appointed to a judge of a Sharia court, you created the job, you did the research, you pursued. So you are really a tremendous pioneer in many more senses than just the first holder. I have many questions around the whole legal system. And just to kind of extend the discussion and I mean, we are in a time of great debate around the whole Sharia, its effects on women, and so on. So let me just say a few things around that question. We had a debate even here in America. I don't know if you've heard that. You need to translate?
No.
She needs me to translate to her, yeah.
Okay.
هي ما كانت تعرف انك انت كنت تعيينك، بس انت خلقتي هذا التعيين من خلال البحث اللي عملتيه، من خلال متابعتك لهذه الامور مع القاضي تيسير، وهناك في نقاش حول موضوع الشريعه في العالم العربي.
So, I actually lost my thread. So
Sorry.
it's all right. Yes, so there's even here in America, there are some states that have banned Sharia law, as you may have heard. I don't know if she's heard that.
تعرف ان هذا في محاكم بتحكم بالشريعه الاسلاميه في امريكا؟
بعرف انه ما بطبق القانون.
Yeah, she knows that.
So and of course there's huge political change in the Middle East, which makes the Sharia law issue actually again a very hot issue. So I'm just going to raise a couple of points. So in connection with the issue of women, you're the first woman in the Middle East to be a judge of Sharia court. I think that, as far as I know, that is absolutely true. But do you want to translate, or should I just keep going on?
هي حسب معرفتها انك اول امراه انت تعيني بهذا المنصب في الشرق الاوسط.
تحديدا ممكن في انه احنا بالنظام القضائي اللي احنا بنطبقه اللي هو بفصل الشرعي عن النظامي. اما في دول بتجمعهم مع بعض، ففي هناك ستات
في الشرق الاوسط.
في الشرق الاوسط زي المغرب ومصر.
في places like in North Africa, like Egypt and Morocco, there are women who have been.
بس النظام القضائي يختلف طبعا، لانه احنا بنطبق الشرعي كشرعي لحاله، اما هم بيجمعوا كل النظام القضائي مع بعض.
بالضبط. And that's what I want. She said actually there's a difference between what's in the Palestinian territory. You're the first Sharia court, and that's perfectly true. But I think the audience need to know that too, which is that in fact there are women judges in Tunisia, Egypt, Morocco, Egypt, and Tunisia.
بس النظام طبعا يختلف، هم كل نظام قضائي واحد، احنا عندنا نظامين قضائيين.
Right, I'm going to explain that. Right. So there are women judges. In fact, currently the vice president of the Supreme Court judge of I forget what it's called. It's the Supreme Constitutional Court of Egypt, which is the highest court of the land. A woman is the vice president of that in Egypt. The difference is, and why you're correct in saying you're the first Sharia judge, that they do not have Sharia. They've abolished the Sharia court. So that's important to know that, because and they've created law, a single law, as she said, from the law, the civil, what they call civil law, which is European-based, mainly French-based law, and amalgamated that with ideas from the Sharia. And so it's important to know that for a number of reasons. One is that tells you that we are in very complicated legal territory, layered historically. And I'm sure that's true of Palestine. She made references to the law in Jordan and so on. So there have been those sort of layers, and we have to be aware of that. And it's important to know that Egypt and Tunisia abolished Sharia courts in the mid-1950s as part of the whole agenda of modernization, and partly to improve the condition of women. So they modified various things. And among the things that they did, for instance, Tunisia introduced a law banning polygamy. And they claimed, and probably quite correctly, that this was actually based on Sharia, on minority opinions within Sharia, but nevertheless on Sharia. So, in other words, they did creatively use Sharia in ways that were positive for women. So, and prior to Egypt and Tunisia banning Sharia courts, of course, Turkey in the mid-20s had altogether abolished Islamic law and borrowed wholesale the Swiss legal code. So, and all of this was part of the project of changing the condition of society, part of the era when they were pursuing modernization and improvement of the condition of women. So obviously now we are in a very different time, and it's quite possible with the new elections that have happened in Egypt and in Tunisia, the new parliaments, it may be that we might well see the reinstitution of Sharia law. And in the Egyptian context, Tunisian context, I think many people, including devout Muslims, men and women, do not want to see a Sharia law brought back, or Sharia courts, even if they're headed by women. So this is in no way to take away from her extraordinary achievement, or to, I mean, she gives me hope for Palestine and for women. But do be aware that it's part of a very complicated and very ferocious debate that's going on in the Middle East now as to whether to reinstitute Sharia in countries where it's being banned or not. So all of these issues are really part of the broader discussion.
I agree.
Would you like to
Yeah.
comment?
I agree.
Okay.
Okay, that's great. And how?
While Tunisia and Egypt are banning Sharia, Nigeria is taking on Sharia. So maybe you know a little bit about the country. We have about between 70 to 80 million Muslims. And in 1999, we had the new Sharia introduced. And the new Sharia has criminal aspect to it. So 5 offenses, major 5 offenses were introduced. They include amputation when you steal, stoning to death if you commit adultery, flogging, publicly 100 if you drink alcohol, if you commit robbery, they call it hiraba, they crucify you. And then if you change religion, you commit apostasy and you can also be stoned. So this is the new offenses. But I sort of want to say thank you so much for this amazing talk. And 3 things I came out with from what you said, and I just want to pick on them. You know, the good book for some of you that read them says, seek and you shall find. Ask and it shall be given unto you. Knock and the door will be open. And that was what you did. And if there is any powerful message here, we should never relent to seek. I thought that was my take-home point. The second take-home point I got from what you said, which is, I guess, very powerful, is the ability to turn challenges into opportunities. There was nothing stopping you. You had a plan. You had a plan A, plan B, plan C, and a fallback, and an exit strategy if it came. I thought that was powerful, to always turn challenges into opportunity. And the last thing I wanted to say from what you mentioned, which I thought was powerful, was this ability never to give up. Never give up. And Gloria was saying at the beginning, this could be the beginning of a revolution here. And yes, we are on board. Let me just share a few things, two or three because of the time, and we want maybe a lot of people to come in for the discussion. Let me share two experiences as a lawyer. And I have been a lawyer for 22 years this year. 12 of the years have been in Sharia courts. And it came out in this book, Practicing Sharia, which has just been published. Thanks to Anne Browdy and Bill for keeping me here to get it done. When I started the practice of Sharia, I had no voice. So I went into the courtroom for the first case in 1999, and I wish I met you before then. And we were trained with seniority. So I came into court with 3 other men. And because I was the most senior lawyer, I should introduce myself and my colleague. But my colleague were men. And I stood up to say, may it please the Honorable Court, my name is Hawa Ibrahim, and with me, I wanted to introduce the men. And the judge looked at me and said, but there are men in the court. My colleagues are supposed to speak, not me. In my situation, and we practice Maliki, not Hanafi, and sort of right now we are trying to see how we can be inclusive of other school of thinking, but it's also partly cultural. And practically what the judge was saying, shut up and sit down. And I realized it from at the beginning of the cases. I have handled over 100 cases of Sharia. But I realized from the beginning of it all that it's not about me. It's about what you do and what you sort of elegantly said here, that we do have a goal. We have an objective. And our objective is, if we could, even if it is a drop in the bucket, we keep dropping, always thinking ahead of us, and we want to change something. You want to be a judge to want to change something. And I was a lawyer, I wanted to change something. I don't know what that thing is clearly, but I wasn't ready to take the status quo. But it is also important that I do not force myself, and I was not lucky to have a situation where the men will listen. So I decided to sit down and develop other strategy as to how I will approach the subsequent cases. 7 years after, I had a voice. And it took 7 years for me to get a voice in the Sharia court, but it's the beginning of the struggle to ensure that there is dignity for all human beings, like you rightly pointed out. And the last one I wanted to mention, just to open up for discussion, is what I have written about how do we, at what point do we sort of couch strategies? And that is part of the experiences I've had. What point, what do we know, and how do we couch what we want to know? I mean, what we want to sort of move with. In the 7 strategies of achieving justice in Sharia court, I suggested that we have to understand the dynamic of the people. As you heard, Sharia is so vast, it's so dense, it's so diverse, that it's at times difficult to pinpoint what is Sharia really. But we need to know the dynamics. That is my experience. But beyond knowing the dynamics is how do we work within those dynamics. And my second strategy is the ability to pay attention to details. But beyond paying attention to details is to see whether you can fit in within your own dynamics. How do we stay focused on small things and big things and remain focused? In some of the Sharia cases I've handled, a woman sentenced to die by stoning, but the media was all over. But how do we know that our basic responsibility as a lawyer in my case, I'm a minister in the Temple of Justice. And what I know are my client and my client only. And the fact that I want them discharged and acquitted, that was my objective. As a judge, you have done that eloquently. You have been there from 2009 to date, and so much to learn from you. And you may read other strategies subsequently, but let me end up by saying some few words about you that I find touching. I mentioned to you at the beginning of the lecture, before the lecture began, that when I saw from Erica the email that we have Palestinian judges, I don't know whether some of my students are here. I took it to the classroom. I printed it out and gave it out and said, see what we have, what is new tomorrow, right in front of us. I think that is an inspiration. You are an inspiration to us and to me specifically and to the jurisdiction where I come from. And I look forward to hoping having your documentary into my own system, where I believe among other great things and positions you have held today, you have reminded us that where one sex dominates, in this case, maybe the male sex, in Sharia court, and try to regulate the challenges of the other sex, which are women, progress, freedom, peace, and sustainable development, to my mind, will be slowed in our society. What an inspiration you are, Judge Khalud. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. We do want to provide an opportunity for all of us to engage in the dialogue. Now, we have about 10 minutes, so I'm sure you will have some questions. Let me just ask in advance if you could make your time at the mic a question as opposed to a comment, and try to be as cogent as possible so that we can have a little bit of time for some dialogue. And who's the Oprah among us? Here she is.
I wonder what room for interpretation in the Sharia law system the judge has. Or are you just bound by what is already there, like this penalty is stoning or whatever? What room for interpretation does the judge have?
بالنسبة لنا احنا طبعا قانون الأحوال الشخصية اللي بنطبقه زي ما ذكرت هو قانون أردني.
For us, you know, the civil law that we practice is a Jordanian law.
وهذا القانون هو يستمد أحكامه من الشريعة الإسلامية وتحديدا المذهب الحنفي.
And this law, again, it's strength and practice from the Sharia law, which is the Hanafi school of thought.
ولكن تم طبعا كل ما يتعلق بالأسرة جمعها ب 183 مادة.
And this law, you know, had gathered all the law elements in 138 laws. Code.
وطبعا أنا كقاضي زي أي قاضي موجود في القضاء الشرعي ملزمين بتطبيق هذا النص بالتحديد.
As a judge, like all the judges in this field, we have to follow these codes specifically and carefully.
وطبعا إذا كان هذا النص بحاجة إلى شرح عندنا قرارات المحاكم العليا طبعا إن إحنا بنمشي عليها.
So if this text need more explanation, we have the highest court that we go and refer to it for more explanation.
How would you like to comment on that?
And the question is about interpretation. So we have 4 legal systems in the country, so it's even make it more complicated. Sharia is just one of the 4. And when it comes to interpretation, we are yet to... The Supreme Court of Nigeria has the final power to adjudicate where there is a conflict between laws. But Section 1 of our Constitution says where there is a conflict, whereas a legal conflict between laws, to the extent of the conflict with the Constitution, that law shall be null and void. But the Supreme Court had not taken Sharia cases yet to be able to interpret the law because of the jurisdictional matter. Now we have the jurisdiction by Section 277 Nigerian Constitution limited to only civil matters in the Sharia court, even though they try criminal cases. So the interpretation have not come yet, and we are hoping it will come soon.
So if I can follow up actually and direct to Judge Khulud the question that you were asked earlier. Let me give you an example, and I'd like to know what you would do. I know from your reading your resume that you actually worked in a battered women's shelter, right? Yeah. So do you ever receive criticism from somebody who says, well, the Quran says you can beat your wife?
هل عمرك اخذتي اعتراضات من ناس ثانيين بيحكوا انه مثلا القرآن بيحكي انه مسموح لك تضرب المرأة، فانت ليش بتدافع عن المرأة؟ ليش بتدافع عن هذا الشيء؟
طيب يعني ما هو انه احنا القراءة للقرآن ما هي ما بتكون بما يسوق او ما يربى عليه الانسان في المجتمع. القراءة القرآن يعني.
Reading the Quran should not be the Quran shouldn't be read based on what satisfies the society.
ولأنه إذا يعني إجاني شخص وحكى لي هذا الحكي بعرف إنه هو عنده نزعة ضد المرأة.
So when a person comes to me and say these things, I know that this person has something to do, like has something against women.
لأنه أنا بدي أنظر للمرأة طبعاً. ممكن أنا أيام ما كنت في مركز المرأة بحكي إنه يعني قصة هي حقيقية كانت إنه أجا حدا وحكى إنه الرجل الحق إنه يضرب المرأة.
So during my work at the Women Organization Association here, there's a story. It's a true story. It's about a male beated like a male was beating a woman.
فأنا حكيت له إذا أنت بتؤمن إلك الحق إنك تهين إنسان كامل الإنسانية.
If you believe, she told him, if you have the right as a man to
يهين.
If you believe that you as a man have the right to humiliate another person,
فهي إلها الحق في الدفاع عن النفس وإلها الحق تضربك.
So she, on the other hand, has the right to defend herself and to respond to you the way you treated her.
فتوصلنا لنتيجة إنه الضرب لا هي تضرب ولا هو يضرب.
So we reached to the conclusion that no one should hit anyone.
وبالتالي إنه إحنا بشر كاملين ما في تمييز بيناتنا.
In the end, we are all human beings with no differences.
ممكن إنه إحنا لو نتعمق بالدراسات الإسلامية حول هذا الموضوع.
And if we go deep to study the Islamic literatures about this specific topic,
يعني رح نجد إنه الإسلام هو رفع مكانة المرأة عاليا.
We'll see that Islam raised the status of women high.
وكثير من الأحاديث اللي بتدعو للرجال إنه ما يعاملوا أزواجهم كالبهائم.
There are a lot of saying that says in the Islamic religion that say that men should not treat women like animals.
والرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم حكى إنه بأحاديث طبعا وهي صحيحة بالتواتر تاعها.
And the Prophet Muhammad said in his saying
إنه ما أكرمهن إلا كريم وما أهانهن إلا لئيم. ما بعرفش كيف بدك تفسرها. ممكن الدكتورة يعني إنه من يكرم النساء هو الكريم ومن يهينهن هو اللئيم.
Yeah, whoever honors women is the one who is most honored, and who insults them. Say it again.
اللي بيهين المرأة مجرد الإهانة يعني كمان مش الضرب هو الإنسان اللئيم.
So who humiliates women is I don't know what how to translate
is a very mean person.
هنا عن الإهانة فقط. فما بالنا لو جينا للضرب.
This thing about just humiliations. What about physical harms?
فلازم إنه الدين يقرأ بصورته الواسعة.
So we should read religion from a broader perspective.
بعيد عن المصالح الشخصية.
Far from personal benefits.
وبعيد عن التنشئة الاجتماعية الخاطئة.
And far from the wrong social practice.
وخصوصا ثقافة العيب والحرام الموجودة عندنا.
Especially the education of forbidden and shame. You know, we have this, you know, the forbidden and the shameful acts and the forbidden acts.
يعني هذا هو رأيي.
Perhaps one more question.
Thank you very much, all of you. That's a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I wanted to ask Judge Khulud something. When you decided you were determined to become a Sharia law judge, was the driving factor for you the challenge of getting into the world of men because it was under the dominance of men, or was it more getting into Sharia law and becoming a judge so you could help women's rights? What was the more dominant?
السبب اللي شجعك على أساس تدخلي هذا المجال هو قرارك كان مبني على تحدي عالم الرجال، أو هو كان مبني على التصميم على العمل كقاضية شرعية علشان تساعدي النساء من خلال شغلك؟ يعني إيش اللي دعمك وشجعك لهذا الموضوع؟
يعني ممكن اثنين مع بعض وممكن كمان في أشياء تانية.
Maybe both of these reasons, and maybe there are more reasons.
خصوصا إنه أنا عندي قناعة إنه لا للأبواب المغلقة.
Especially, you know, I believe of a saying that says no to closed doors.
وأكيد كل شيء في وراه سبب ولازم نبحث عن السبب.
It is for sure that there is a reason behind everything, and we should look for these reasons.
Well, if there, I just want to ask one question. We've seen lots of transitions in the last 2.5 years, and in particular concerns that perhaps some of the gains that women have made are going to be restrained or perhaps even lessened. Can you see any way forward with all of the significant changes? Can you see that there's a possibility that perhaps women may even emerge stronger?
Well, you know, I mean, for one thing, Judge Khulud gives me great hope, at least for the Palestinian territories. If there are people like that, there's hope. But I do say, I mean, when I was when watching the Arab Spring or the Tahrir Square and all the women were extremely active, including very religious women. They've been leaders actually in the movement, but we seemed at the moment, sadly, to be falling into terrible conditions. And I know that a lot of women are suffering and protesting, and I don't know what the answer is, but I'm hopeful seeing Judge Khulud here.
I believe there is hope. Gloria, the work you do, what Susan does, what a lot of us do in this room, without a doubt, the door of Ijtihad is still very open. And the hope is also very within our reach. But we should not be naive about it. It means that there is also opportunity for us to redouble our efforts. Maybe the struggle is just about to begin in some of the society, and where we have taken one step forward for us to reinforce it by not giving up, turning opportunities, challenges into opportunities.
يعني أنا بالنسبة لي بأكد اللي حكته حواء.
For me, I agree with Hawa.
وبحكي إذا ما في أمل معناه ما في حياة.
So if there is no hope, there is no life.
وبحكي كمان إنه صح إحنا أنا وزميلتي أسمهان دخلنا مثلاً قضاء بس بال2011 كمان تم تعيين قاضية ثالثة في فلسطين.
Me and my friend Asmahan, we were the first two women to be judges in the Sharia court, but in 2011, in 2011 there was a third woman who was appointed to this position in Palestine.
بس كمان أنا بحكي إنه بالإضافة للأمل لازم يكون هناك إصرار.
Also, I want to say, to add to the hope, there must be an insistence and determination along with the hope.
وأنا بس بدي أعطي مثال صغير بالشهر 6 السنة اللي فاتت.
I want to give a small example. Last June and last year.
طبعا إجا قاضي قضاء جديد تعين في فلسطين.
There was a new judge for the higher court that was appointed in Palestine last year.
وأخذ قرار بترقية القضاة.
And he took this decision to promote the judges to higher positions.
ولما عمل الترقيات اختار ناس تعينوا معنا وهم رجال وأنا وزميلتي طبعا ما اختارنا.
And he chose only men to be, promoted these higher positions. He did not choose me or my friend.
بالرغم إنه إحنا تقارير الكفاءة كانت إنه إحنا من أعلى الدرجات كنت أنا وزميلتي.
Even though me and my friend we were very qualified to this to these positions.
فأنا بالنسبة لي ما استسلمت.
For me, I did not give up.
وممكن حكيت مع القضاء ممكن تليفونات كلفتني أكثر من نص راتبي.
I talked to all judges. I spent half my salaries on these phone calls with the judges.
حتى أقنعهم إنه إحنا لازم نوقف مع بعض ونرفع دعاوى تبطل هاي القرارات اللي هي مست بحقوقنا.
To stand together as judges and to raise against these new laws that will violate our rights as judges.
للأسف من 45 كنا إحنا 3 فقط اللي رفعنا دعوة أمام المحكمة العليا.
Unfortunately, out of 45 judges, only 3 of us raised a case in the higher court against this decision.
طبعاً وأنا واحدة منهم.
I was, one of the 3 people.
وبستنى القرار في 6/3.
And I'm waiting for the decision to be made in March 6 this year.
وكمان ما وقفت هين.
I did not stop here.
قدرت إني أجمع 14 قاضي.
I was able to bring together 14 judges.
وقعنا على عريضة.
And we signed a petition.
ورحنا يوم جمعة على الرئيس.
And we went to the Palestinian Authority presidents on Friday.
طبعا هو إجازة بالنسبة لنا.
This was, a holiday for us. Friday is a holiday there.
وممنوع إنه نتنقل بحكم الحواجز الإسرائيلية.
And we were not allowed, it's hard to move around during this day because of the Israeli checkpoints.
بس ومع ذلك رحنا وعملنا له مفاجأة في المسجد اللي بيصلي فيه.
Even though we went and we made a surprise for him, and we went to the mosque where he prays the Friday prayer, and we made a surprise for him.
وأعطانا العريضة وطلبنا بتعيين قاضي قضاء جديد.
And we gave him the petition and we asked him to appoint a new judge for the highest, a new chief of justice for the highest court.
وطبعا إن شاء الله برجع وبكون في هناك قاضي قضاء جديد.
And God willing, there will be.
Thank you so much. I don't know about you, but I am so inspired. Martin Luther King tells the story of the Montgomery bus boycott, and which, as you know, lasted almost a year before African Americans were allowed to take a seat any place on the bus. And so it was their custom that everybody would walk, but the older people would be provided a ride. And Mother Pollard was in her 70s and consistently refused a ride to work. And when the young Martin King asked her why wouldn't she take a ride, she expressed her pride over this movement. And she said that her feet were tired, but her soul was rested. And for sure, there are significant challenges that women and girls face in the world, and our feet are tired. But Judge Kholoud is on the case, and our souls are rested. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. Be encouraged. We're going to handle this situation. The revolution has started.